tell me I was being political, we were supposed to be
And
technical.
that's basically so
I
good
just,
with you
I mean, I responded with technical arguments to everything. Finally, he just wouldn't recognize me anymore.
Okay.
And he said, staff is gonna work with you. I said, great. So when they didn't publish the comments again today, I included him on the email just so he could see how many emails
That's what we did.
it had taken to get them to
Give one to
It's amazing. I still can't figure out what.
We didn't really cut it. We just said it's a good project, and if RCDC wanted to take it up,
Right.
they could.
But to achieve the balance for the roadmap.
There was no reason to put it in the budget when RCDC can handle
Well,
it.
also Mayor Anthony's comment was
Basically
also
punted it.
I got hers in there.
So we did tonight to get to the balance.
Oh, not
So,
so,
but RCDC would
So we
still have to
technically
have a public
right
hearing over it,
So
publicly
Mayor
notice
Cox,
it, all of that
Mayor
before it could
Anthony
be
and I
approved in
talked
their budget,
about
so it still would have a process to go through.
well, what they did is they put
RCDC.
Commissioner Trevilian in there. And so he's supposed, and Pflugerville already has a policy, and he's supposed to also be giving Pflugerville another voice. And I'm all for the different voices, but depending on what happens when Gerald is no longer there, we were, the three of us were talking about pushing to reopen that to be one of the three of us, because I think Western Travis County is going to be a strong voice.
What was our total number for that?
In what way Vernon?
Got rid of yourself accordingly.
Yeah.
And how fast they can get to if they can't go anywhere after they get there.
That's a great point.
I work trying to get them on board, and they keep, the old county commissioner, Hayes Tilly, believe it or not, recognized that. Okay. No, it was, he wasn't commissioner, tried to be commissioner after. There's no process that I got along with very well.
I think we just said
You know, if it's not flowing smoothly, anywhere in the bottleneck, it doesn't matter how fast we get to the bottleneck. And that's what we're talking about. So, we have to figure out a
I
way
think
to.
we can say 39.
To me, this, I think, a pretty decent guy.
I think he's great. It's just, I think if Gerald isn't. It's
like, I'll
Take them out.
Of the other people in this analysis point, I'm not sure he would have the knowledge or the desire to dedicate
At
time
one
that
point,
requires
hey,
this.
did y'all put my account receivable from our auditor on our budget?
It's a year-end entry.
Okay, I just want to make sure we collect on that. They've got against me on some basketball. Foolish. In fact, Abel, wouldn't you say that was a masterful deal of me baiting him into betting?
It was a dumb, you know what, deal on his part.
It's almost one of those deals where he lost on the game and then doubled
Screwed up,
down
I
on
put
the replay.
15s in here instead of 10s. I'm taking the money out of here and putting it over here.
Oh, okay.
And I had to put 15s on
Well,
both
I
sides. So that
I know that's a lot of work,
So this
but
should be
I could hear the,
10s.
Yeah.
And this should be
20
15s,
this-
and on the
this
other one it was,
right
okay.
away.
I got that, I noticed that.
I know. Well, I think it's an earmark. We'll have to all decide what that is, you know? It's always been a really good team effort.
Yeah. So, Gavin, the only reason I am here, the only reason I'm here is
Right? And now you're supporting our budgeting, because you've been through it. Caught the tail end of it. That's right.
Ben Frank.
I'm just
There you
waiting
go.
to see. We're betting, taking, trying not to use that, which one of them.
I'm gonna probably have to use that here this whole week. Like, I'm starting to go like this underwater with all the stuff that.
I'm kind of looking at it, but you know what, I don't think that's. My mom seems like.
rates more than that.
So, first of all, so strong. Secondly, there's a reason I didn't pick this stuff. like that's the kind of, those are the kind of.
I think it's
The last thing. Oh my God, the last thing I need is to become a walking.
they want to give their input.
Uh,
Yeah, something else. You think?
that is good.
We still got some
That would be.
water issues we gotta do for when it comes to.
Are we about ready, guys?
Today, John, he's gonna send me a.
Well, that's what we were talking about during the budget, is
get
we
this-
have that
let's get this going.
cul-de-sac line item at 50,000, and we have the 4 cul-de-sacs at 75 each. We don't have enough money for it, so we have to
gotta be
bond.
I finally realized what the problem was on God's cul-de-sac.
What is it?
Well, the line that the engineers wanted to run came from Randolph Place. And the easement between Randolph Place and his cul-de-sac, there was a tree in the middle, and the landowners, objected to the actual easement, whether we actually had it or not. And they wouldn't give us what we were doing. So at that time, we had to do those other line erosions to even have any water to get in there.
So we had
I
to.
couldn't remember exactly what that was.
Hey, council member, we ready?
Your amendment? Or writer? Thank you for doing this.
Okay, we're gonna get this special city council meeting called to order. If we could start roll call with Wendy, please.
Wendy Huntley?
Amy Patillo.
Sarah Hudson.
Charlie Zeck?
Amber Lewis.
And Mike Dyson. We'll open up for public comments. We don't have anybody signed up, but if anybody would like to speak on something not on the agenda, whether it be a public hearing or something later in the agenda. Okay, no public comments, then we will move on to our first public hearing. Item 2, first public hearing to discuss the proposed fiscal year 2019 to 2020 ad valorem tax rate for the city of Rollingwood, Texas. We'll open the public hearing at 7:11. Is anyone from the public here to speak on this item? Not have for
On the
The
budget.
tax rate?
on the budget,
It's the tax rate.
the tax rate,
It's the tax.
sorry. Okay, not having anyone, we'll go ahead and close. We'll go ahead and close the public meeting at 7:12. Or sorry, public hearing rather. And we will call up public hearing to discuss a process for request for proposals for the operation, maintenance, and ground lease of the City of Rollingwood athletic facilities. We will open the meeting. We'll open the meeting at 7:12. Or open the hearing rather. And I am going to request that everybody be respectful of everyone else's time and limit the comments to 3 minutes. First up, we have Marnie Fitzgerald.
Hello, I'm Marnie Fitzgerald, 442 Ridgewood Road. I'm here in part as president of the Rollingwood Women's Club. And I just want to say a couple quick things. First, thank you to the council. I know that you guys put your blood, sweat, and tears into this, and it's a volunteer situation, and I'm very appreciative. And I'd like to also thank the Parks Commission for their hard work on putting together a proposal for you for the next RFP. I'd like you all to consider the entire community when making decisions for our public spaces, including our park space as multi-use. I think is important to a lot of people who come and use the park daily. Speaking specifically about the dog park, I think that one particular area is used by most people, or a lot of people, either morning or evening, and quite a lot. So I hope you'll take that into consideration when making your decisions. And then I'd also like to ask you to be thoughtful about an ask from the Rollingwood Women's Club, because we have a stipend that we'd like to spend our money. Our mission is to spend the money on the parks in the Rollingwood area. And we have moved our voting meeting to January 21st. So we would love to have a proposal submitted to us by December 15th. And our members will vote on the 21st of January here in City Hall. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excuse me, Marina Breland.
Hi. Dear Rollingwood City Council, please excuse my prepared statement being read, but I want to use my 3 minutes as effectively as possible. And thank you, as always, for your service to our city and community. I appreciate you giving of your time and talents, and I thank your families for sharing you and supporting you in your service to our neighbors. Marina Breland, 2808 Rollingwood Drive. I'm a 36-year resident of Rollingwood, and recently I served on the Park Commission for 2.5 years until rolling off earlier this month. I assisted the Park Commission's RFP subcommittee earlier this month with fact-finding before departing for a 2.5-week trip out of the country, and apparently my timing was impeccable. While I have been away and cannot promise to be up to speed on all issues, I think it now seems apparent, in order for the Park Commission and the city to realistically consider and negotiate the terms of any proposal to lease and operate the athletic fields, it is imperative to gather and have the following information, which the subcommittee has been diligently working on. 1, what repairs and improvements are needed and or wanted for the athletic fields and park. This possibly includes the irrigation, improved drainage, fencing, sod and or turf, ground cover, shade structures, a new dedicated multi-use park area. 2, what are the true maintenance costs to maintain existing park assets, including the athletic fields and surrounding upper park areas? And if new additional improvements are made, how will this affect the park's cost of immediate and deferred maintenance costs? 3, maintenance and operations schedules, procedures, and oversight. A schedule of regular and deferred maintenance must be established, and just as importantly, responsibility of maintenance must be assigned between the Park Commission, the city, the lessee, with regular reporting to and between the 3 parties to provide adequate oversight and a system of checks and balances. 4, funding. How will overall park and the athletic field maintenance on operations, improvements, and projects be funded? Are possible resources or the city RCDC, lease revenue, fundraising, donations, grants, and underwriting? The Park Commission and subcommittee have been diligently working on gathering this information and the figures necessary for the city to make informed decisions on how the park will move forward, and thus how to draft a new RFP and ultimately conduct proposal negotiations. I think the subcommittee is on the right track. I ask that you afford it the opportunity to complete its assignment and seriously consider their proposals and information. And I think they have been gathering this in good faith, and I hope you would work with them in good faith too. Thank you.
Thanks, Marie. Melissa Morrow.
Melissa Morrow, 2502 Timberline Drive. Thanks again for your service and time. I just want to reiterate my support for Western Hills Little League and the Western Hills Girls Softball. They've been a great partner for the city and for this community. I also want to just emphasize the important role that the Parks Commission and the city staff play in making sure that the standard of care of the fields is held to those defined in the final agreement. So as you develop the RFP, it'll be important to also put in their standards of care that you expect from the partner. That the city and its supporting civic organizations look at some ways to consolidate efforts to raise funds for the park. Right now, the Rollingwood Women's Club, we've had neighborhood groups and the city and different groups trying to raise money, but we've never really looked at an overarching or a group of people to help bring all of them together. And I think that's something that this conversation is going to help bring together. And that the city makes sure to continue to support other users and really let other users know that this RFP won't displace them. Because I do think some of the hard feelings that are out there are about groups that think that suddenly they're no longer going to have access to it. And while one of the things I love about the baseball and softball games is seeing multi-generations out there. You see grandparents and parents, but you also see that with the dog children that are out there also. You see multiple generations out there of people talking and walking and having really spontaneous, wonderful conversations. So thanks so much for your support, and I look forward to seeing what the new RFP brings.
Thank you, Melissa. Eva Ruth, Moravec?
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Eva Ruth Moravec, and I live at 4 Inwood Circle. My husband and I moved here 4 years ago now, and I just want to thank you guys all for your time, your service on the council, and also the Parks Commission for their time on this. We moved 4 years ago, and I don't have any kids. I have 2 small dogs. Immediately, I met people in my neighborhood through walking the dog around the neighborhood. Met good friends that way and felt a real sense of community here. In January of 2018, we adopted a much larger dog who needs to be worn out daily, and I was really thrilled. They know Jet well. I was really thrilled to find that there's such a great asset as the park in our neighborhood. We can walk there after work in the evening, and it's a great way to unwind, and we also have gotten to know so many people that way. I've really been able to find a sense of community in Rollingwood in a way that I think other people who have kids probably can connect to their neighbors. We wave to each other driving around. I feel like if I need anything, I know who I could call. And we talk to each other and we care about each other. So I think that, cordoning off dog usage to a very small area of the park, if you don't go with the optional multi-use option, then I would worry that that little sliver is not going to be nearly enough for the usage that park gets on the evenings. There are often dozens of dogs there. It's very well used, and it's a great little community. So just want to be considered in this and to make sure that we're not just slivered off in a little area that's like less than a third of the lot of most of the Rollingwood lots. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Kevin Gleason. Glasheen, sorry. Am I butchering your name?
No, it's
my
fine.
apologies.
It's Kevin Glasheen, and that's my wife Eva Ruth who just spoke to you. So somebody might want to add our times together, but we both did want to speak to you. We have enjoyed the community. I'm a lifelong Texan, but we moved to Austin just 3 years ago, and we built our house at 4 Inwood Circle, and we do love the neighborhood. And I'm also an active trial lawyer and a real estate developer, and am interested in politics, and got 49.5% of the vote for city council in Lubbock about 10 years ago, where I was living at the time, and so I've been grateful ever since that I haven't had to listen to the public come in and make these comments. But I will tell you that this, I haven't gotten much information from the city about what's been going on with this process. It's ironic because I Googled you, Michael, and saw, your big priority when you got elected according to the community impact interview was like communicating with the residents and making sure that everybody knew what y'all were planning and were on board. And I do get robocalls about low water pressure, but I've gotten nothing from the city about any of this whole process or discussion except for what we've requested. And that's been a little frustrating. It's caused some concern and anxiety amongst the people who do enjoy the dog park. We do have a little community, and it's caused people some anxiety. So I'm interested in knowing more about what the issues are. But I can tell you my number one priority is, to make sure that the dogs do get consideration for shared use of the facilities. As far as whatever else the city's trying to accomplish, having been a real estate developer, I've created private parks and such, but I just wonder what the goal is of selling an interest in the park through a leasehold or contract rights to some for-profit company. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but it seems like this is a wealthy community that has a lot of generous people, and certainly would participate in an organized fundraising effort if that's what needs to be done. I would certainly support youth sports myself with donations, but whether it's donations or taxes, I just think that that's a legitimate government functions to operate parks. And that losing control of something like a public asset is problematic. But I realize that's a more complicated problem that I know little about at this point. I haven't gotten much information about it, but I would just, hope that that's done carefully and we don't end up losing that park for 10 years or longer on some lease or contract terms. But if that's going to happen, I'd like to see the shared use and the dog park use be maintained. Thank you all. Appreciate your.
Thank you. Sandra Farrell.
Good evening. I'm Sandra Farrell, 3223 Park Hills Drive. And I'm here tonight to say that I hope when you consider the RFP that the operations of the park is held to the standards that we want to raise them to as proposed by the subcommittee. I'm a little confused today whenever I was looking at the agenda tonight because the RFP that's on the website is, I assume, the old RFP. And so I don't, I'm not sure, are you going to post a new RFP with new dates and everything on there for any input? Or, I just wasn't sure why this was on the packet, since these dates are not good. I just was a little confused. So can you address that, or?
There's a public hearing, just a factual response.
Okay, sure. So it's just a sample of what's been done before, so everybody has it in front of them. We're trying to share as much information as possible. And then Councilmember Patillo did offer up an amendment to the existing RFP, so that's something that she would like to see in the new RFP. Right now, we're having a public hearing on the process. So even does the council want to issue a new RFP? Do they even want to go through an RFP process? Do they want to, I don't know. That's for them to direct.
And so is that going to be decided at the next council meeting, next regular one, or the next special one?
Right, so council directed that there would be 3 public hearings, and this is the second of the 3.
Okay.
Tomorrow at the special called park commission meeting, we'll have another public hearing to receive feedback, and then it would go to council at the regular meeting to decide what kind of process. That's all we're talking about right now.
Okay.
What does the process look like to start lease negotiations?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Phil McDuffie.
Hi, Phil McDuffie, 4711 Timberline Drive. I'd like to thank all of y'all for your time and your consideration. When shopping for a place for a home, certainly we drove the neighborhood saw the parks, this was a large consideration of why we chose Rollingwood, was the use of the parks. I consider it one of the amenities that we have. Since then, I use the park twice a day. With the exception of my immediate neighbors near me, everyone I've met in Rollingwood has been through use of the upper park, mainly for off-leash use for the dogs. I think the current size of the enclosed area is ideal. I think anything smaller would be unusable and would likely lead to conflicts among the dogs. Also, I think that it does have a wide variety of ages, groups. You have youngsters, you also have older residents, and I know for many of the older residents, this is their primary physical activity for the day. This is what gets them out of the house, gets them walking. Some of them are rehabilitating and that type of thing. I think if we make a smaller area, quite frankly, I think it will lead to conflict, and you will have a mandate that is very difficult to enforce because people are going to continue to try to use what works. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Diana Walls.
Hi, I'm Diana Wallace, 2603 Rollingwood Drive, and I would like to add my voice to all of the others who express our gratitude and appreciation for the voluntary work you people do, commissions, councils. It's extraordinary, and it's greatly appreciated. And I have basically one point to make, which is that, oh boy, do I want that dog park to stay exactly the way it is. The shared use, the multi-use, I don't quite consider myself a senior citizen. They're going there for rehab. However, there have been 3 generations of Currys and Wallaces that have lived in Rollingwood. And I have to say, in the years that I have been going to the dog park, I have met and come to know more people there than all the years that I've lived here. And that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. And we have people, we have kids, we have pregnant moms right out almost to the day before delivery. We have older folks. We have me. I won't say which category I'm in. But it's just fantastic. Anything smaller, I agree, would be an issue. It would be a potential source of concern. Frankly, it works so well with the sharing and the responsibility. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. That's the last we have signed up. Anyone else? Tom?
Tom Farrell, 3223 Park Hills Drive. My original purpose of being here today was to just be here for the budget so that so somebody showed up on the budget on that. I was following the footsteps of some great Rollingwood residents, Freddie Mueller and Sweet Carlson, that used to show up for every budget I had on that, and so I'll just leave it at that. I was here. I was late, but I was here on that. Dog park. Thank y'all all for everything y'all do. As you know, I know that everybody puts in a lot of effort on this. You know, my concern is we're spending a lot of money for a dog park that I'm concerned that people are not going to use. Originally, when we had a multi-use of these ball fields, one of my concerns was the health and safety issue of the kids using the same field on that. And I think from a city liability standpoint, and just from the city liability standpoint, we probably should go ahead and ask the county health department to get their opinion about shared fields like this. Because I think if you have kids that are having cuts and you do have the dogs, and I'm a dog person, so I accept that. But and I think the speakers before me are exactly right. we're not gonna have the police over there enforcing this, because they're gonna be busy doing this thing. And there are more people using it than I thought. I think one of the times I was up here before, I'd asked that, how many we thought used it, and it's a lot more than I thought were using it. And that's great, because it is a public park, and that's what we should use it for. But we may have to rethink how we do this, but I think we start with making sure that the city does not have a liability about having a multi-use field on that. And that's a simple deal, I think, by going with the county health department and just get an opinion from them as to whether that creates an issue. May have to just have less of a larger area for the dog park, and which would make a little bit different design than what we've had. Because I think this is a critical issue. I don't think if you get the people that go up there that like to run their dogs and you put them in a dog run, that they're going to be very happy with that. It's going to take a bigger area on that. And we may have to relook at how we open up some space to do that with that. So thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else would not signed up would like to speak on or in this public hearing? Going once, twice, sold. We are closing the public hearing at 7:34. And if we could also have the record show that Councilmember Shapiro joined us at 7:20. Okay. We don't have anything on the consent agenda today. We will move into the regular agenda. Discussion and possible action on an ordinance amending ordinance number 2018-19, open parentheses D, close parentheses, as previously amended, adopting and approving amendments to the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2018, and terminating September 30th, 2019, providing for adjustments of spending authority among budget line items and providing for immediate effectiveness.
I move to adopt an ordinance amending ordinance number 2018-19D as previously amended, adopting and approving amendments to the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2018 and terminating September 30th, 2019, providing for adjustments of spending authority among budget line items and providing for immediate effectiveness.
Second. Mayor and council, I did want to add that you have attachment 5 distributed at the dais, and there was a clerical error in the attached that was included in the packet. So this top under expenditure accounts, basically what we're doing is moving from 10 department administration. It should show we're moving it to 15, and I think in the packet up here, a few of those were incorrectly labeled as 15. So basically what this budget amendment does is appropriate funding for the new department, planning and development services, which is where Carrie is working under, and how we're controlling the costs and fees for services for planning and development.
Do I see a net offset of 2,500? Net department budget amendments of 2,500?
Yes.
What was that?
Here is on the table.
Bring in the big guns.
And
What I was doing is moving the funds necessary to properly reflect the expenditures in the development services in the Department 15. The original worksheet I gave you had 15 at the top instead of 10. I made a clerical error there, and so the corrected copy I gave you has 10. And basically it's a net of 0. Has no impact in the overall budget except putting the funds where they need to be. The reason I left some monies in Department 10 was because prior to June, that's where those expenditures were reflected. So I left them there, and so I need the appropriations to cover those expenditures.
Okay.
So the leftover funds, I'm moving down to 15, the Development Services Department where Carrie is now. And again, the net is 0.
I know it's not really related to this, but I didn't cover it in the budget workshop. You know how we have those funds that we transfer at the very end of the year?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Are those all accounted for? I know not here, but did we do those end of year transfers?
We have not yet because we haven't closed out the month of
So you'll
September.
close out at the
Right,
end? Okay.
correct,
But those are all on track to be?
right. And again, you're not gonna see them until the month is over.
Right, okay.
Thank you, Amy. Council, we have a motion
And a second.
and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Discussion and possible action on an ordinance of the City of Rollingwood, Texas, adopting and approving a budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2019, and terminating September 30th, 2020, and making appropriations for projects and accounts, and providing for severability and an effective date. This will be a record vote, council.
I move to adopt an ordinance of the City of Rollingwood, Texas, adopting and approving a budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2019, and terminating September 30th, 2020, providing for the filing of the budget, providing that this ordinance shall be cumulative of all ordinances making appropriations for projects and accounts, and providing for severability and an effective date.
Second.
Motion from Gavin, a second from Wendy. Any discussion, council?
Amber, I can't find, do we have the budget from the work group included here, or how are we doing that?
Well, the document that I laid in front of you is a summary of.
Oh, we'll just go off that.
Yes, what we're calling the draft 4B.
And that's
So-
updated from what we just did?
Correct.
Okay.
This is reflective of what you just adopted. So these are all the bottom.
Will you just run
lines.
through it real quick for us?
Sure. So the draft 4B budget proposed has $5,919,835 proposes overall total revenues. In the general fund, we are proposing, let's see, hold on. The total general fund, $2,630,409. The water fund in expenditures. I'm now going to expenditures. Water fund is at $935,420. Street maintenance fund is funded at $114,056. Court technology fund is funded at, court security fund is funded at $11,000. Court technology fund at $7,500. Court efficiency fund at $100. Debt service fund series 2014 fund 430 at $199,750. Debt service fund series 2012 at $318,720. Debt service fund series 2019 $407,715. Drainage fund at $172,357. Wastewater fund at $620,207. Total expenditures, all funds in at $5,417,234.
And that includes all exceptional items that were adopted by the work group over the last several sessions?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So that puts revenues over expenditures in the amount of $502,601.
And does that account for our budgeted 25% reserve?
It does, yes.
And we did not.
It's reflective of that.
And we stayed at the 25% reserve this time.
Correct.
I know we've talked about, did that come up on your S&P call?
It did.
Were they okay with 25?
They would have preferred a little bit us having more robust reserves, and they noted that our working towards 25% reserves was positive. They're always going to want to see more.
Kind of tough with a $5 million budget.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'd commend the council in being diligent in getting to 25%. That's a recent occurrence for anybody that doesn't doesn't know, we were not necessarily the most diligent in making sure that we had reserve funds, and that has been a priority for the last couple councils. Similarly, getting aggressive with making sure that our finances as a community are in line with what we're actually bringing in. So this council has made some pretty good moves as far as saving the city a fair amount of free cash flow over the course of years. At this point, I think we have a running total of $2.7 million in free cash flow savings for decisions that the city council has made.
And Amber, this proposed budget includes the $75,000 for a new police department vehicle?
Yes.
A multi-use vehicle?
Yes, it does.
And it includes the personnel salary increases of 3% for $39,000
Correct.
for a total of roughly $114,000? Okay. So that's the proposed budget we've all worked on. I do have one amendment to the budget that I would offer as a rider. And I'll just lay it out, and then I'll include it as part of the motion. An amendment to the 2019-2020 budget out of funds appropriated above in line item 5,000 salary, $39,838 shall be used for personnel salary increases of a 3% cost of living adjustment, with the exception of any employee hired or granted a new contract within 90 days of the adoption of this budget. So you'll be voting on that when we vote for the overall budget.
So just to clarify, you just read a different
I did, that's last year.
item. This is last year's. Could you read that one more time?
Sarah and
I know, I was like, what?
you're like, sorry, yeah.
Because I was trying to read this and
I'll read it
didn't hear all of it.
slowly. This is as a result of the discussion in the work group that Sarah and I had. Out of funds appropriated above in line item 5,000 salary, $39,838 shall be used for personnel salary increases of a 3% cost of living adjustment. New language that you don't have there. With the exception of any employee hired or granted a new contract within 90 days of the adoption of this budget. Basically says all COLAs go to everyone unless you've been hired or given a new contract within 90 days prior to this budget.
Did it say 90 days prior to adoption?
Within 90 days of adoption. I'll add prior.
Thank you.
Within 90 days prior to adoption of this budget.
Unless we're intending it to go the 90 days after we adopt it.
I'm with you.
So is that clear on the police chief that starts tomorrow?
Prior to or after. Let me reread it. This is the revised amendment rider. Out of funds appropriated above in line item 5,000 salary, $39,838 shall be used for personnel salary increases of a 3% cost of living adjustment, with the exception of any employee hired or granted a new contract within 90 days prior to or after the adoption of this budget.
I like it.
90 days prior to or after, so it's the 90 days before plus the 90 days after, so it's 180 days. Okay.
Do I need to second that since I seconded the motion?
Let's go ahead and do that for consistency.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Discussion, council. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, sorry, right, thank you for the reminder. Sorry, record vote. Wendy Hundley,
Aye.
Gavin Massengill,
Aye.
Buck Shapiro,
Aye.
Amy Patillo,
Aye.
Sarah Hudson.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you, council. 6, discussion possible action on a resolution of the city council of the city of Rollingwood, Texas, ratifying the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget which will increase tax revenues over last year's fiscal year 2018-2009 budget. This also is a record vote. Council.
Move to adopt a resolution ratifying the recently adopted budget that contains a property tax rate that raises more revenue from property taxes than the previous year.
Second.
We have a motion from Gavin, a second from Wendy. Discussion, council.
So, as we've discussed in previous work sessions, this budget is slightly above the current rate of 20 cents, which is the effective rate, and this rate is 20.88 cents. It raises $113,381 more in tax revenue, and this will cover the two items that we mentioned being in the budget previously, which is the new police department vehicle at $75,000, and the personnel salary increases at a 3% COLA of $39,000, which is 114, which is right in the ballpark of what this is covering.
Any other discussion, council? Not hearing any, we'll move to the vote. Wendy Hundley?
Aye.
Gavin Massico?
Aye.
Buck Shapiro?
Aye.
Amy Patillo?
Aye.
Sarah Hudson?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, council. Discussion and possible action on a resolution approving a budget for the Rollingwood Community Development Corporation, Rollingwood, Texas, for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2019 and ending September 30th, 2020.
I move to adopt a resolution approving a budget for the Rollingwood Community Development Corporation, Rollingwood, Texas, for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2019 and ending September 30th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion from Gavin, a second from Wendy. Discussion, council? Record vote as well. Wendy Hundley?
Aye.
Gavin Massigo?
Aye.
Buck Shapiro?
Aye.
Amy Patillo?
Aye.
Sarah Hudson?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, council. Item 8, discussion and possible action on an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Rollingwood requiring a written investment policy, requiring no less than annual review of the city's investment policy and investment strategies, requiring the city record the date of annual review and changes made to said investment policy or investment strategies, requiring appointment of an investment officer, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
I move to adopt an ordinance of the City of Rollingwood, Texas, requiring a written investment policy be adopted, requiring no less than annual review of the city's investment policy and investment strategies, requiring the city record any changes made to said investment policy or investment strategies, requiring appointment of the city's investment officer, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
I'll second.
Oh,
We have a motion.
Giving my
mixing
colleagues
it
a
up a
chance.
little bit.
A motion from Gavin, a second from Amy. Do we have discussion, council?
Didn't we already have this?
We have to annually review it and make record that we've annually reviewed it and,
And adopted it all over again?
yes.
Does this constitute the annual review?
This constitutes the annual review.
So
I-
should we maybe review it a little bit?
I reviewed it and I sent 2 typos to Amber already on page 6.
Serious review?
There's an extra "the" and there's a period where a colon should be. So I sent those over.
I'm sure that's the one I caught too.
And when I double checked earlier, because on page, these are the things I looked at, just if we're going to talk about it a little bit. On page 6, on the delegation of authority, I just clarified that it talks about that the city administrator shall be responsible for ensuring that all of the physical and monetary assets of the city are appropriately safeguarded and controlled, and perform any duties of city treasurer as required by general laws of the state of Texas. So that's currently Amber performing that. We also, through the adoption of this policy, the position of city administrator shall be designated as an investment officer who is responsible for investment of the city's funds. And the city administrator may delegate the responsibility for investment decisions and activities to the finance manager, Abel. So clarifying that those are the parties that we have, that we've delegated authority to and under this, and that no person can engage in an investment transaction or the management of funds except as provided under the terms of this investment policy as provided by the city council. and the investment authority is effective until it's rescinded. So that's our investment team. Thank you.
Thank you for taking a look at it. Was this the policy that we were lacking when you came on?
No, we were lacking y'all approved it last year, budget review policy.
That's right.
Yes.
Did this come up, Mayor, in your call with S&P or not?
To a degree.
It's a check the box kind of thing for them?
A check the box. They'd like to see us as a community have be a little more proactive, I guess, in both primarily forecasting, but certainly with mid and long-term financial strategies.
Counselor, is this anything that you work on for other cities?
Yes. I haven't reviewed it though.
No, I understand. It may be something that we might, I don't know if there's room for improvement here or not, because I don't know what to compare it to, so.
Yeah, we can certainly get with staff.
Okay.
I would agree with that
Those are my
sentiment.
deep thoughts for tonight.
I was reading through it to make myself aware
Yeah, I
of
mean,
it
I've
again,
read
but
it and
I'm
okay,
I'm not
sounds
exactly
great.
sure what improvements we could make that would fall within our current city limitations and would also potentially improve our rating at some point in time.
That's where I am.
Our biggest criticism for our rating is our lack of diversity in revenue streams, most notably our exceedingly heavy reliance on ad valorem, which is a fancy way of saying property taxes for all of you guys. That was probably our single biggest ding that was noted on the call. Figuring out additional ways to bring revenue streams into the city so that we're not reliant on one potentially going awry. It's hard for us to imagine at this point, considering how well our properties are doing as a community, but that's not how other folks view credit risk. So
We are reliant, but it's only 20 cents too.
20 cents, well, 20.88, assuming council adopts it. Very modest compared to our regional neighbors, again. It accounts for a significant portion of our budget. By some estimations, 64% of our budget is ad valorem's simply from residential properties. So that is they frowned on it, is the short answer there.
Well, they're welcome to come open some retail if they'd like.
I tell you what, I'd love for them to come do some business here and buy a sandwich or four. But I think we all know that we're limited on commercial spaces. You know, we play the hand that we're dealt, fellas.
Okay, that's all I've got.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, council. Item 9, discussion and possible action on the 2019-2020 holiday calendar for the city of Rollingwood, Texas.
I'm done with my motions. Somebody can take it away.
You're doing so well.
Budget motions are done.
I move to adopt the 2019-2020 holiday calendar for the city of Rollingwood as shown in our council packet.
Second?
For motion is second. Any discussion?
It's the same
That's
holidays that we have for this year.
We have an additional day before Christmas Eve. I was hoping that you would be okay with us not coming back to work on Monday and then taking off Christmas Eve and Christmas.
Oh, so it's because it's where it falls.
Because
I mean,
it's on a Wednesday, Christmas is on a
Monday,
Wednesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah, Christmas is on a Wednesday.
pretty modest 3-day closure for City Hall, guys.
It's pretty slow during
Yeah.
Christmas.
Do you check like on a situation like that, do you check messages or
Of
is there some
Yes.
sort of?
Yes.
One thing I can assure you about our city administrator, she is on call entirely more than she ever should be.
Yes. You can
I'll
call.
come up here, so I
You
don't
can
have to go
call me on,
anywhere.
on those holidays.
Sorry, honey, we've gotta stay in town. Gotta report.
So if we add another holiday, police get holiday pay?
They get paid double time and a half.
Do we have that accounted for in the budget?
We do.
Wow.
Yes. Thank you, Abel.
All right, council, we got a motion and a second. No discussion or further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I don't know that I would have wanted to be opposed to that. Good on you guys. Standing agenda item. Update, discussion, possible action to pass a resolution, request a meeting with, to provide information or a statement of position of the city to and/or to request information or analysis from relevant state and local officials in connection with proposed South Mopac expansion. Before I invite Councilmember Patillo to speak on this, I hope that the importance of this item and what is being proposed for the changes that are being proposed for Mopac South, the impact of that on our community isn't lost on anyone out here. This item is probably the single biggest issue facing our community with regards to impact on our quality of life, as well as our property values. That is to say that if there is an elevated lane applied to Mopac South, that will obfuscate anything as simple and superficial potentially as it sounds to our views, but more importantly, that will add to noise pollution without question to our community. Thankfully, we've had a couple of our council members that have worked diligently over the course of more than 5 years to make sure that our voices as a community are heard in very meaningful ways. And with that, I will invite Councilmember Patillo to add color.
Great, thank you. In the council packet, we have the same resolution that was here last time, and there was some conversation ongoing about whether it might be more appropriate to put this into a letter rather than a resolution. And so I was able to talk to Deanne Heath, who does external affairs for CTRMA, in between our last council meeting and this one. And I think somewhere in there we decided on the resolution format, but they are perfectly happy with a letter. And so we're gonna go ahead and work on transitioning this into a letter format, but can take comments tonight on any specific elements that are in here as we transition it in, if the council would give us leave to transition it into the letter. And that fits more with the format that we have been using in the past in our correspondence with CTRMA. And for lack of a better word, the resolution format feels a little wonky to be able to describe the meeting that we had with CTRMA and the information that was presented to us about the ramp lengthening project. And then also to be able to reserve all of the rights that effectively we're reserving related to the rest of their project. And just to distinguish, to remind everyone, the ramp lengthening is their proposal to lengthen some ramps right by Barton Skyway in order to potentially reduce some of the bottleneck that exists on Mopac South at Barton Skyway. And the hope is that that would then reduce some of the backup traffic that reaches the new bottleneck that's there on Mopac South at the Winstead exit.
And sorry to interrupt you,
yeah.
but for clarity, we generally, we as a community voted to, I forget how many months ago now, we were largely in support of that as a relief valve for traffic as it impacted our community. But there's been a change since we originally, or potential change in the discussion since we originally approved that. That's changed from CTRMA scope, I guess.
Right. Well, I think that one change was at our junior council meeting. We talked about it, and we were generally in approval, and we were looking at writing something. CTRMA asked us to put something in writing that would indicate our support. So some of the things that
you visited.
Go ahead.
They saw this, and they're okay with this or not?
Deanne has seen it, and I indicated to her that we were having discussion about a letter versus a resolution, and I asked her, I couldn't remember whether they had asked for a resolution or whether we had just started drafting it in a resolution format, and she indicated that a letter is fine for their purposes, and it may be more in line with the type of correspondence that we've had, where our mayors have been corresponding with Executive Director Helgenstein and kind of memorializing the meetings that we've had and the things that we've agreed to, or the things that we've thought were positive steps forward, and then things that we're still advocating for.
In my mind, the goal, well, in my mind, the format that it takes should be somewhat reflective of what the real goal of the message is, because I feel like a letter, while fine, doesn't necessarily show the full force of agreement of the council. So if it's just about, if it's more about expressing support for the ideas on the table, I'm cool with the letter. If the goal though is to press home the non-elevated piece, I think it's a stronger message delivered with the resolution that has to pass the entire council.
What if we just all sign the letter?
Could do that too.
We could. We drafted the resolution focused on that this is an element that does not require elevating lanes in order to reduce congestion on MOPAC South. And that's the type of thing that for the past 5 years we've been commenting on as a city that we would like to see. So that's why it's titled the way it is, to your point.
But we also wanted to make sure that it didn't get confused with the elevated ramps at Barton Skyway project, which is very similarly worded to the ramp project, that we are not in support of the elevated ramp project. So as we started to draft this, we started our drafting in support, and then we started working on all of those things that we wanted to clarify were not the project, and
I think you stand the chance of losing your combined message if you go the letter route, personally.
Even though they requested it in letter format?
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Why don't you do it by letter format, and the letter is approved by a resolution with appropriate legislative findings, consistent with your policy directive, and that way you get the benefit of both.
I like the letter format because I think that this format sort of did restrict us from going back and we've written really long letters. And we have a lot of information in them, and we try to consolidate it into this resolution, but we want to make sure that we continue to have a consistent message. So I really like the idea of drafting that letter and adopting it with a resolution. Now, for the legislative part of it, would you explain more what you mean by that?
We would include in the resolution some legislative findings that are consistent with your policy directives in the letter. Whereas City Council finds and determines that it's in the best interest of the citizens of the city of Rollingwood that A, B, and C, whatever. So that you've got strength in both the resolution adopting the letter and then the strength of the letter.
I really like that.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I'm
good with either way. I just, having received those types of letters before, really they're just gonna they're gonna hold them up and say, oh, look, see, Rollingwood's for it. And you might have to dig 3 pages into it to figure out what we're not for, which is this, which is pretty clear.
It is clear from the title.
They're not going to like this.
Right.
But it's kind of I'm good with, I'm good with any of it, I'm
We
just,
can help draft something that makes it, we can help draft something that makes it clear at the beginning of the letter. Hopefully, your policy.
doing both probably serves both purposes a little bit better. I'll follow your lead on it though, it's whatever.
I mean, I think that, I couldn't, once we got the resolution first drafted, then I couldn't remember what type of format we were going for. And
I thought it was a resolution.
so,
too.
yeah, and I think that also, I wasn't sure exactly who the audience would be, if it's something where it would potentially be part of what goes before the Texas Transportation Commission, when CTRMA is requesting permission to do this project, or if it is just something that they need for their file to feel comfortable that we're not gonna come out and oppose it directly. And so the resolution, I think, probably gives us a little bit more of a position if it goes before the Texas Transportation Commission. And at the same time, it doesn't, someone would have to know all of the terms and a little bit more of the history. So it also maybe wouldn't provide the full record of what we've done and said. There may be ways to do it better too that we could get to with Charlie.
So what do we need to do tonight?
I think we just, when we had it in the council meeting last time, I had made a motion to bring it back tonight and thought I would have time over the weekend to work on it, but I didn't. And Wendy didn't, and so we need leave to have some more time to work on it and to get any other feedback.
How dare you guys spend time with your kids?
I could not let that happen again. Permission granted for more time.
Yes. I think you should follow the city attorney's lead on this though, what his suggestion was. That makes the most sense, kinda hit it from all angles.
I really like that tie-in with, although I think we
I
did
get
a good
where
job on the
Gavin-
resolution. I think it's pretty good, solid.
I get where
but I think
Gavin's
the
coming
letter
from,
could be.
but they also requested a letter, so it's like.
Well, they actually just requested that we put something in writing indicating that we're going to support this or not oppose it. That was the request. So I think Wendy and I moved towards a resolution format because that,
Allowed you to get it all.
right, but
It comes with strings. Yeah.
it seemed, and I think the last time we did at the very beginning of when the city of Rollingwood entered into participating in this process, we had a resolution opposing the double-decker, as did the city of Austin, and came out with that. And then we had a resolution recently regarding a bill this summer, or in May, but we haven't used the resolution format in our correspondence other than those two times. And at the beginning, I think a lot of cities were trying, like, Rollingwood came out with our resolution, City of Austin followed a couple months later. They had just changed to their new city council format. Everybody was kind of trying to play catch up a little bit. So that's where we are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the discussion.
Council wanna give direction? Do we need to give direction? You're clear? Clear? Fantastic. Any action, council? Okay, then we will move on to item 11, discussion possible action on policy of the Rollingwood Police Department regarding on-call pay. I've got a note. Invite to the stand.
So, this pay was just, to implement for the fact that we have been short-staffed, that this is for compensation for those officers that we are on call daily. I mean, because of us being short-staffed, we have been on call 7 days a week for the last, since August 1st. And so what this does is provides minimal compensation, but also provides a direction if that officer does get called in, that it also follows that plan of action regarding compensation as well.
So, are we amending, what are we doing here, Amber?
Just approving the policy. It was brought to council at the last meeting. The city attorney hadn't had time to review it, so this policy has been vetted by the city attorney. It provides shift compensation of $40, and then it talks about what happens to their pay if they get called out while they're on call.
And are we adding this to the policy manual?
Yes, so it'll be added to the police department policy manual.
Right.
So.
Hoping we don't have to visit this again.
Right.
But
I'm good. Who's the liaison?
We're good.
You good?
I'll just say that I really appreciate that our department has been on call and taking time away from their family to respond to the needs of Rollingwood when we're short-staffed. So I
appreciate that.
really, y'all have done.
they have,
above
they've
and
stepped
beyond.
up, and like I said, I mean, they've done a great job.
You all have.
So.
And I know you have done it and you're salaried, so you don't benefit from this,
Right.
but I love the fact that you have worked to establish this policy to make sure that the officers are taken care of, so thank
Right.
you.
Thank you.
So do we have any way to compensate them for what has happened since the 1st of August? If we're just adopting this tonight,
We can't. We are constitutionally prohibited from retroactively paying employees for work already accomplished.
other than a bonus.
Other than a bonus that is properly budgeted for and described in an objective fashion for purposes of being entitled to it, which if you've done, great. If you haven't,
Okay, but so we can't implement this for what they've already done, but we could put something in a budget amendment to compensate them for what they've already,
no, you cannot.
For compensation.
to reward them.
You cannot,
thank
you
them.
cannot do that. It's
What's the
called
proper
a-
term for
it's-
bonus?
It's a constitutional gift under the Texas Constitution. You cannot pay a public employee for work already performed unless at the beginning of the budget process, you properly budget for and provide objective criteria for them to comply with in order to be entitled to that bonus in the future.
So how do you give a merit bonus?
You properly budget for it at the beginning of the year and
Or we pass a
Right.
constitutional amendment?
or that's, it really is a constitutional issue. You cannot gift public funds, and the court system and the Texas Attorney General have all held that paying public employees for work already done that isn't properly budgeted for is an unconstitutional gift. So it's something I have dealt with for 18 years, and it's the same answer every single time. You can't do it.
But it's a good idea.
It's
I
a
just-
great
it-
idea.
It concerns me that there's no, on the other side, Department of Labor standards for requiring people to work and not paying them.
Well, that's a different question if I'm not saying that occurred in this situation, but if there's been some violation of some Fair Labor Standards Act or some Texas statute that requires us to pay them for something that we didn't pay them for, that's different than saying, hey, thanks for doing what you did, we're gonna pay you a little bit more money.
So just to clarify, is this going in the police policy manual or it's going in the city employee manual?
It will go in the police policy manual.
Okay. So I would move to amend the police policy manual to include the on-call pay policy.
Second.
Well, do we have to, take action to adopt the policy and add it to the manual, or is that just adding it
Yes,
to the policy?
just adoption of the policy is sufficient.
Okay. Is that what the motion was?
I thought it was. Was I?
I thought it was just to
Amend.
add it to the police.
Is to amend the policy to add this policy, right?
To amend the police.
That's
The
fine.
policy manual of the police department to add.
I don't
this
remember exactly how I
law.
said it, but
That's fine too.
Okay.
my intention is to adopt the policy in
As part of
it's-
the-
as part of the police policy manual, because we do have a police policy manual, and
That's what they.
that's
I
where it
second
goes.
all versions.
Yes.
The motion.
It's become very complicated.
It really has. But I actually was asking
Any
also because
possible
I'm
versions
interested
you
in
can come up with.
where,
Where it's going.
where we can find it in the future.
We have a motion second. No, of all versions. Further discussion, council?
We have enough in the budget for this.
We
right?
did budget for
That's what I thought.
this, yes.
All right, yeah.
Hopefully we don't need it anymore.
Correct. Hopefully we don't.
Any further discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. Thank you. Discussion and possible action on a professional service agreement with Katie Zemesnik. Got it. Right on. To provide bump and development services for the city of Rollingwood. As a recap, council, we discussed this briefly our last meeting, a couple weeks ago, a week ago. And we postponed further discussion, any potential action to tonight. And here we are. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so bandwidth has dropped to 0.
So sorry for
Um,
distracting.
just for the sake of adding clarity, and for the public's sake, who've been very diligent for sticking with us, which I'm very happy to see, thank you. One of the challenges that the city of Rollingwood faces is ever aging infrastructure, and we all know that we've got aging water lines, we've got drainage issues. We have in the past taken bond packages out to pay for what I would refer to lovingly as big ticket items. We have spent the last year, a little over a year, developing an infrastructure improvement plan. This is intended to be a comprehensive plan so that when a drop of water lands here, we're not moving it unnecessarily to somebody else's property unintentionally, and we are able to carry a full stream from beginning to end. K-Freeze has been charged with developing that plan. We've had numerous community hearings and received feedback over the course of this year plus. We are due to receive that plan from K-Freeze next month, or this coming meeting, I guess, on October 16th, which should highlight our costs, our anticipated costs undertaking these various projects. We also recognize that we still have, as we mentioned earlier in our budget workshop today, we still have cul-de-sacs, 5 at least, 5 in our community that do not have upgraded water lines, despite majority of our city moving that direction back in 12 and 14 under those bond packages. We also, with the level of development that has happened over the course of these years, come to realize that we still have water lines that were installed in the 1950s, and they've done a very good service to our city, but it's probably time that we properly retire them. We also have concerns with everything from our infrastructure at City Hall to everything from mobility through our utilities, et cetera. So, that is the impetus of this portion of the discussion. We are constantly faced with restraints with regard to our budget on undertaking large project development. As we've noted earlier, despite having shy of $6 million in budget, we only had about $500,000 in what we could comfortably call discretionary funds. That really limits you on what you're able to do as a community as far as improving your infrastructure. One of the things that has been floated, or a couple of things that have been floated, everything from tax notes all the way up to potentially exploring at community level a bond election. To further that discussion for consideration, the city has had a conversation with Katie Zemeznik. I'm going to keep saying your last name until it just rolls off the tongue. And the city brought this up